Reach Global is the international missions arm of the Evangelical Free Church of America, or the EFCA. We're a network of missionaries who invest in disciple makers to establish the church where the gospel isn't known. Reach Global's roots go back to 1887, when we sent our first missionary to Canton, China. And today, we have more than 500 missionaries serving in more than 40 different countries. At our core, Reach Global is partnership-driven. We're dedicated to building relationships and strengthening ministries that have already established a presence in their communities. Our goal is to come alongside local pastors and ministry leaders and partner together to see God transform the nations through the gospel. We do this by training and empowering missionaries with a variety of skills and callings to use their unique gifts to follow Jesus' Great Commission around the globe. Whether it's a rugby coach in London, a church planter in Congo, or a videographer in Thailand, our goal, like the EFCA, is to glorify God by multiplying transformational churches among all people. Reach Global isn't looking for a certain type of missionary. We're all called to make disciples of all nations, and Reach Global has a place for you.
It was horrible, and it was shocking, and I thought, Lord, what are we going to do?
You can't believe it's happening. I was angry. It's overwhelming. It's frustrating. And sometimes you just feel like giving up.
Walls had to be replaced, floors had to be replaced, appliances had to be replaced.
Everything crushed and everything came inside. I just couldn't talk.
Took this building and destroyed it from top to bottom.
Unbelievable. Cars tossed up on top of houses.
When the normalcy of life is disrupted, people are left searching, asking questions. Why? Why me? Why now? Why God? And when people ask these questions, we found it over and over again in every circumstance and every culture that there is a mission field opportunity that's open. My name is Mark Lewis. I'm the director of Reach Global Crisis Response. Our approach in responding to crisis integrates several key elements. First, our focus is disciple making.
We're more about the people than the work.
So we're going in to build the home, but in reality, our goal is to rebuild the life through Christ.
Going in and showing the love and sharing the message to people when they have no hope, when they have nothing.
Just to bring that encouragement or bring the gospel to those that don't know is just an amazing thing.
So the only permanent thing that we can leave in this world is knowing that people have found Christ.
They would pray with us at the end of the day. They always had an uplifting sense of humor or a positive attitude that kept you feeling, okay, we're going to get through this.
These people come from all over the country, spend money out of their own pocket to come over here and help people that they don't even know.
It's just overwhelming, specifically for a pastor, a leader, because you want to help, you want to do something. But with an event like that, there's so much you don't even know where to jump in. And to have a team come in and say, we've been here, we're going to walk with you through this, it was huge.
Because of our focus on disciple making, we also place a high value on engaging in long-term relationship with our partners and being present in the aftermath of crisis for as long as is needed.
Our goal is to be there for the long term. We don't want to just gut and clean up and leave. We recognize the value in being there for longer.
When you engage with people for the long term, it opens the door for deeper relationships and the ability to connect and engage.
We had people in Staten Island that came to know Jesus as a result of what we were able to do sustained with crisis response. Because of that partnership, we were able to enter into people's lives and help them for months and years rebuild their lives.
We keep telling them, thank y'all so much. And they say, no, we get more out of it than y'all do. I don't understand that part of it. It makes me, want to be a part of something like that.
The Holmans are coming up. We have a bulletin board that you might check out sometime that Heinke put together, kind of pictures of what Reach Global teams have been doing in our area. It's on the back wall there. So this is Dan and Christy, and most of you guys know them, but some of you don't. And I wanted you just to hear a little bit about them. And my first question, Dan, is like, what did you do before you got involved in Reach Global?
Yeah, I'll actually let Christy answer this because a lot of them I'll be answering, so I want to give her some.
Okay, some FaceTime.
All right. So 2 years before we joined Crisis Response, we felt the Lord lead us to sell most of our stuff and move into an RV. And we were living on the river north of San Antonio, and we had a business, but we also had an opportunity to come on board with a startup church and help them grow. But we had to balance all of that, and part of it was God was like, okay, you got to downsize. And we were like, we feel crazy. We're working at a church and doing this business, and we're living with our 3 kids in an RV. But later we realized that was really God just totally setting us up. So that when it was like, it's time to be part of Crisis Response, it was like, you're already exactly set up and ready to go, because you're already mobile and all that. So it's pretty cool.
And to say, it was a photography business, so we're professional photographers for 18 years, did photo and video. So.
And so, what are some of the disasters that you did before you got involved with us?
Yeah, we joined with Hurricane Harvey, and actually that was the stepping stone. We were able, when Hurricane Harvey hit, I went on my own, didn't even know about Crisis Response. Spent a week there mucking and gutting. I had gotten people to give me supplies, and on the way back I found out about Crisis Response and wanted to get my men's ministry involved in it. And they were looking for people, and so one of the people in the district said, hey, I don't want to steal you away from Stone Oak Bible Church, but I think you would be perfect for it. And so I interviewed with them, and within 2 to 3 weeks we packed everything up and moved to Houston. And so we stayed in Houston for 3 years, but I'm kind of unique in the ministry, and I was on the front end of pretty much every disaster after that, including here.
When did you first get involved with the Campfire recovery?
Yeah, I think we landed the day after. Yeah, we landed the day after, me and Mark Lewis. And I was here for the first 3 weeks, and then was overseeing this response on a consultative level with you and the other EFCA churches up until the point that we got here. And so I would leave the family for 2 to 3 weeks at a time, come here, help, make sure everything's running well and good, and minister to you and the other pastors, because it was a really tough time.
On that day when you and I and Scott Sorich and Neil and Mark came up here, what were the impressions that you had, or still have?
Yeah, I still see, when I drive, I still see it, It was the worst thing I've ever seen, and it was tough, But it was also beautiful, because when we came up here, it was utter destruction, and we got here, and it was literally like a dome. God had put a dome around this church, and when we walked in, and there wasn't even a smell of smoke, it was like, okay, God's going to do something here. We don't know what, but God's going to do something here. So
awesome. And so our church is a crisis response site for the Western states. Could you explain what that means?
Yeah. So we have 5 sites. We have I think 4 or 5. It ebbs and flows depending on what disasters take place. We currently have one in Covington, Louisiana, that's dealing with the Ida response, and that was the original one that started with Katrina. We have a site in Lake Charles that's dealing with, they got hit like 3 or 4 times with, I can't even remember, Laura, Delta, flooding, freezing. We have a site in North Carolina, which is our eastern site, and we have a site here. And so part of the role that crisis response has within the EFCA, because we're a little division, right? Reach Global has Africa division, Asia division, and then they have this little teeny tiny one called crisis response. We see our role within the EFCA as a way to open up missional opportunities for churches within the United States. And so we have an East Coast, we have a Central, and now we have a West Coast front, to where a lot of the churches coming and serving here are from California and Utah and Washington and things like that, because it's easier to come here than to go to even Mexico or places like that.
Right, and what does your work entail here in Paradise?
Yeah, it's whatever the Lord leads. So we are helping people rebuild their homes. We are doing, working on lots. We're doing whatever is possible with a caveat, and that is for the purpose of making disciples, right? And so we could come in and we could do something really quick, like repair a roof. But what we're measuring and looking at is how long do we get to spend with that homeowner? And how many gospel opportunities do we have even for church members to come and develop relationships with them? So the ones that actually have a higher priority are the ones that we can spend 3 or 4 months with a homeowner. And working on some of the members' homes, the reason why we love working on their homes is because that gives us opportunity to work on their neighbors and to help build relationships with the church members and the people within the neighborhood. So it's more strategic than that. The main purpose is disciple making, and we emphasize to our volunteers people over project. And the work is simply just a means to be able to do that.
So that kind of dovetails into my last question, and that is, if you have an overarching goal while being here in your ministry here in Paradise, what would that be?
It's for this church to not only grow, but for this church to be in the community. That's our main purpose here. We typically leave a disaster in anywhere from 1 to 3 years. And when we leave, if we leave and everything that we were doing stops, then what we were doing was not what our goal was, right? And so our heart and our hope is to not only help rebuild a Paradise, but to help rebuild Paradise Evangelical Free and help Paradise Evangelical Free see what it looks like to live missionally in this community. Pete and Patty they were the first ones to move here. We came with them. I came with them in April.
That one's not on. We can't hear it.
Now it's probably on. Oh. I talk loud enough that you could hear me. So I came with them in April and stayed for 2 or 3 weeks, and they actually moved here first. And so I wanted to just give Pete an opportunity. Patty has been traveling, and so she's taking a break to make sure she doesn't spread anything, right? Pete, what did you do before, and how did you end up getting involved in crisis response?
So I managed a wholesale nursery for, a couple of them for 40 years. Horticulture was my passion, my love, and I've done that since I was very young. My wife has been involved at our church back in we're from San Jose, California. Lived there. She's lived here almost all her entire life. I grew up in Modesto and in San Jose, our married life. And the last 15 years, she was director and an assistant to the director for what we called Farm Drive Ministry that our church-sponsored inner city ministry. So it was reaching out to a local community that was a lot of people that were poor and had struggles financially and other different types. So we ministered them in whatever ways that we could. I was involved too, but mostly it was her, but it taught her and it taught me how do we reach out, how do we meet the needs of people, and how do we share the good news of what Jesus provides for them, the hope and love, in different ways and different settings, and that prepared us for the next step that God called us.
And so then how did you end up getting involved in crisis response?
Our church had sent short-term teams to serve with crisis response, and it started after Hurricane Katrina in Louisiana. And so we went with the team to New Orleans to serve, and the very first house we went to, I vividly remember that, was an African-American family, mom and her mom, and their house had 8 feet of water in it for 2 weeks. But they had lived there for 80 years and just really wanted to get back into the house. So we gutted the completely downstairs, cleaned out the upstairs. We were throwing personal items away. It was just like, it was just crazy. And we got it all gutted that week, and we sat around and we prayed with her. Back then, we used to give them Bibles, so the entire team signed a Bible, and we gave it to her. And she said, well, thank you very much. We just really appreciated what you guys were doing here. We appreciate you praying for us. We really want to rebuild this house. And I'm looking at a big crack in the floor, and it was a solid foundation. It was just like not even level. And I'm just like, this is going to be a big job. Fast forward to 2017, we went to Denham Springs, Louisiana on a short-term team. And so we served there all week, but we were flying out of New Orleans, so we went back and we took some people we had with us, some kids from the Farm Drive neighborhood, and we showed them around New Orleans and showed them all the sites. We were close to that neighborhood and I said, hey, I think I know where that house was. So it's been, that was 2006, so it had been over 11 years since we had been back. So I drove around and I think this is the house. Patty, you go up and knock on the door. See, that's what a good couple does, right? So she went on and knocked on the door, and this young African-American man answers the door, and Patty goes, is Bernice still live here? And she said, oh, yeah. Hey, Mom, come out here. So she came to the door, and by then I had walked up, and she just said, Pete and Patty, how are you doing? It's so great to see you. And we were just like, she remembers us? And so that just struck our heart. And we walked through the house, and it was unbelievable, completely restored, beautiful home. The only downside is she's a big Saints fan, and I just, Anyway, so I forgive her, and it just put in our heart that what little work that we did that 1 week can have a big impact in somebody's life. And we went on a number of short-term trips, and one of them they asked us, hey, do you want to join staff? And I just said, no. So a couple of years ago, we just saw some things happening. God put it in our heart to look into, and then start the process of becoming with Reach Global and Crisis Response. And that's what we did.
And since you guys have been here, you've had time to just pray and serve and be. What you personally, or you and Patty, what's your personal desire to see happen here?
Well, pretty much like you said too, is just to see this church. When we came here a little over a year ago, we drove up from San Jose, and we came up here and just looked around, and we met Heinke here, and she gave us a tour of the church. And to hear the story of what God did with this church and protecting it, we just like, okay, God's going to be doing something here, and we want to see what God's going to do. So that just put on our hearts that we needed to come up here and be involved in any way we can. Literally the first week we were here, God was just bringing people to us. It was just like, wait, I've just moved in here, and he said, I can't wait for you. We're bringing people to you, from Billy, our neighbor over here, and his place, to guys who had stolen things from this church, came back and were looking for forgiveness and wanted to pay off their debt, and God was bringing people to us and said, okay, This is going to be huge, God. So we just want to be obedient to that. We want to see the church grow. We want to see people get excited and have the hope that God provides, and to be able to reach out through the different things that we do at different homes, to reach out, to walk, pray in neighborhoods. If we don't meet anybody, great, but if we do, it's just to be able to talk and hear their stories and provide that opportunity for people to share about what's going on in their lives, what they went through in the fire, how they're being restored. What God is doing is just amazing.
Cool. Thank you, Pete. I really appreciate that.
And so Patty's was pretty much the same thing, but she also said she just really loves the things she learned from being down in San Jose, was really just finding ways to be the hands and feet of Jesus in whatever we do, whether it's something physical or spiritually or conversation. So just wanted to add that in.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. Pete and Patty, they live really far away, like we do, so they're right here in this RV in the parking lot. So we all live in RVs, and it's kind of hard to invite people over to dinner. It's a little crowded, so I would encourage you to invite Pete and Patty over to dinner, because they're really great people, and you'll have a really great relationship with them. Let me get Anna to come on up here. Anna she's been with the ministry for how long? 6 months? 7 months? I mean, support raised for a year, but you've been on the field for
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So, you know.
So share with everyone, what did you do before crisis response?
I lived in Minneapolis for 12 years. Before that, I was in Indiana. That's where I grew up. But in Minneapolis, I was a low voltage technician, which means I worked on security systems, cameras, phones, really anything that has some sort of electricity running through it. So I did that, and then just before joining Crisis Response, I was also working part-time at a ministry in downtown Minneapolis. I was a maintenance person there and helped out with short-term teams there as well, and then was also a soccer coach.
Okay, didn't know the soccer part. That's awesome. Yeah. And so then what drew you to Crisis Response? Or why did you end up joining?
I had always kind of wanted to do something to help other people. That's kind of just something that God has put on my heart since I was young. And in right after high school, I did an internship at a ministry called Amor Ministries. It's in San Diego, actually. And they build houses in Tijuana, Mexico. And they use the same model that Crisis Response has, where they use short-term teams to come. And it's about working on the house is about building relationships with people, not just getting a house done. And I love that, and tried to join that ministry full-time. God said no at least 2 or 3 times, and so I decided, well, okay, I guess that's not the path that God wants me to go right now. Looking back, I had to mature a little bit. And so ended up in Minneapolis, worked there, and after 12 years of working in a industry that is difficult for women to work in, I'll say, God just was working in my heart and wanted me to move on. I didn't know exactly where that would take me, and so I was just talking with a friend of mine who happens to work for Reach Global, and he was asking me, if you could do something else, like what would it be? And so I said, well, I've always wanted to go and use the skills that God has given me to help other people, and especially people who are in a vulnerable spot or gone through a crisis or whatever it is. And he was like, that kind of sounds like Crisis Response. Have you ever heard of this? And I said no, and eventually, it was very intriguing to me, so I ended up going on a trip by myself and went down to Corpus Christi and loved what they were doing, loved what I saw, and decided to go home and pray about it for a year. And because, God had said no the other times, and so I was a little bit hesitant. And so I prayed about it for a year and then went on another trip and said, you know what? It doesn't hurt to try. And so I was like, if God doesn't want me to do this, he'll say no again, and I'll keep moving forward. And he ended up saying yes. So here I am.
There you are, yeah. And as you've been here, so you came in September. I get you and Mike and Peggy mixed up. So you came in September. Since you've been here, you've been able to serve. God's starting to put you into awesome roles and opportunities. What is your hope for this response?
Very similarly, my hope and desire is to see that Paradise Evangelical Free, that you guys grow as a family, that you love each other as a family of God, and that by loving each other and growing in your relationship with God, that you also want to reach out to your neighbors and be neighbors that love each other and are witnesses of what God has done in your lives, how he has brought you through all the different tragedies and difficulties of life. That's my hope.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll give you guys all the $5 that I owe you for saying the right answers. Thank you, Anna. Really appreciate you. 10. Yeah, okay, 10. Sure. Mike and Peggy, come on up here. Mike and Peggy are our newest group of staff, and they actually, you guys you've been missionaries with Reach Global for a while, so.
Yeah, we started back when I was 50 years old, which was like almost 15 years ago. So, we've been doing this for a while. We actually went overseas. Before that, though, I did a lot of short-term mission trips. So I did a lot of trips like that are coming here to this church to help this community. I did a lot of that stuff. So we would go overseas and serve for 10 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever. So 10 days, what did I say? 10 weeks? Oh, sorry. But anyway, the short-term stuff actually got me involved in missions. So before I was 50, and Peggy was, 47, something like that, we left for the mission field. I always came home from my short-term trips and said, Peggy, I could see us doing this full time. And she always would say to me, Mike, I'm not sure about that. I'm not really on that same page. So it took her a few years, you can imagine, because I was doing that for 20 plus years. So every year this happened, and every year she would say, well, not yet. But eventually she changed her mind, and God convinced her that it was something that we could do. So the two of us left for the mission field. We first served in Greece. We served there for about 8 years. And after 8 years, God said, you know what, it's time to leave again. And so we left, not knowing what was next, and ended up in Panama. We served down there for about 4 years. And then God said again, hey, wait a second, I have something else for you. So we came back to the States not knowing what we were going to do, and then found out about Crisis Response and ended up joining Crisis Response because we just have that heart to serve the Lord wherever it is. And life is full of transitions, we found. And so, every year we always question, okay, is this where we're supposed to be? Is this what God wants us to do? And so we've been following that path, and that's how we've ended up here. And so.
You have anything to add to that, Peggy?
Just that we're from Wheaton, Illinois. I was born and raised in Wheaton. We had a construction company before we left for the mission field. Mike had his own business, and I was a stay-at-home mom, I was a privilege to be a stay-at-home mom and a Bible study leader. And then I just worked with Mike in the business, not doing anything with the tools, but with the computer, just doing the administration and the books.
Good,
so,
good.
Yeah.
And you're now doing administration here,
Yep.
right? Volunteer
Yep.
coordinating, and you're helping on the job site, using those years of experience to.
We called missions our midlife crisis at 48 and 50, leaving. But we had 3 kids who got married in 5 years, and we were done with those responsibilities and just said, God, what do you want for us? So it's a little random crazy, but for a hometown girl who hadn't left her hometown till she was 48. But God does amazing things wherever he calls you. However, don't feel like I have to leave my home and live in an RV to be a missionary, because he calls all of us everywhere. And it's just a privilege to give back from what he's given us.
You know, I'd like to add to that, too. I didn't come to know the Lord until I was 33 years old. Peggy and I actually came at a later life to know the Lord. And so Peggy was 30, I was 33. And so in that process, we felt like God blessed us in such a mighty way. That's why we wanted to give back to him what he gave us. So, anyway.
Perfect. As you guys, you haven't been here very long, but as you guys have been serving, you get a sense of what you hope to see here?
Yeah, we're excited about just meeting new people. We've had the pleasure of working over at Roger's house and just getting to know his neighbors and just sharing life with people. It really radiates who God is through us. And so that is our hope for this church, is that God will radiate out of your life and be that example for your neighbors around you so that you can serve them in a way that you're not even aware of. And that is the beauty of Christ. You know, Christ radiates from us if we allow it. And so, yeah, that's what our excitement is for this church, is that all of you church members, will radiate his love and what it means to be a Christian and how that helps you to build the community. Because really, like we were talking about in Matthew 28, you know, we're all called in missions, but in different ways. You know, we're not all called to go and serve, but we all are called to serve him. So, anyway.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Thank you. So those are our staff, right? Those are the people that are here. They have moved here. They're dedicated to serving this community, and that you've heard their hearts and desires. We have teams coming in regularly. If you guys have not gone downstairs, you can see church did an amazing job setting up bunks downstairs, and we've separated rooms so that we can house people. We have a team coming in this evening, and they'll be serving here this week. And then it's segmented. There's some gaps and stuff like that, but we have teams coming and starting to sign up for the year to come and serve. The other thing that we have, and this is every third Saturday of the month, every third Saturday is what we call Serve Saturday. And it really is that we don't have volunteers from outside coming. It is led by believers here. And Chico EV Free and Oroville EV Free. 9 a.m. on Saturday here. Guys, come and serve with us. And there's no time requirement. You can come for an hour or you can come for a day. But we would love to have you come serve with us as we reach out to your community. And then finally, we've got some pictures and stuff like that, but our missionary cards and Reach Global information and brochures are on this table right here in the back, in the foyer. We'd love for you guys to take some of that information. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to pull any one of us aside.
Hey, Dan, you might want to add in there that, no skills are required.
Yes, perfect. That's a great point. For Serve Saturday, doesn't matter your skill set or your age. I think we're going to be painting, so most people can do that. Some people, I think, get more on themselves than they do on what they're doing, but we'll forgive you on that. But we have done a wide array of things. We helped a lady, you guys have heard of Saran, who has passed away. We helped Saran as she was at the end of her life, to help her see her property not just completely die, right, as her body is fading away. And we were able to love on her and bring joy through fellowship by just going and being with her. And so even if you just want to come and talk to people, that's just as valuable, if not more. So please don't let anything keep you from coming and serving. Oh, yeah, and Thursday night, when we have teams, we have community dinner. So this Thursday night, you guys are all invited. Bring a part for a meal, something to eat, and it's a potluck, and we'll set the tables up in here and fellowship together and eat.
Explain what the kind of different approach of that Thursday.
Yeah. So our Thursday, we do this at every site. Whenever we have volunteers come in, those volunteers are serving during the day, but at lunchtime, they're not only having lunch with the homeowner, but they're actually prayer walking the neighborhood that they're in. And as they prayer walk, they interact with the community, right? We've had in some places people run up to our volunteers who are wearing green shirts and say, "You are the green shirts. We've heard that you will pray for people. Can you pray for us?" Right? So there's our desire is that there is a constant saturation of Christ and Paradise E-Free. And our volunteers are not going out representing Reach Global Crisis Response. They're going out representing Paradise Evangelical Free Church. And so as they interact with the community, they invite the community to come and eat with them on Thursday night. And our hope is that the members will come too, and the members will be able to connect with the homeowners, maybe those people who don't know Christ, and then relationships will spur on to disciple making.
Thank you so much, Dan. When we first, right after the fire, because our buildings survived, we were contacted by law enforcement and fire and so forth, and they said, "Is there any possibility you could open up that building and that we could use it?" And so we did. And so for the first few months, pretty soon we had semis, Billy Graham Association, Samaritan's Purse, Red Cross, Green Cross, all the people. This sanctuary was filled with supplies, blankets and food and water and so forth. And it was a distribution center for, people who were victims of the fire. And I had a number of groups approach me and say, "Could you do that long term?" And I just had sort of a check in my spirit, like I think God has something else for this building. And during that time, I knew Dan, and we'd been talking about things, and the vision kind of came that, no, we want to convert our building into a place where people can come, short-term missionaries, and stay here and work in the community, because I started getting a sense pretty early on that this rebuild of Paradise was going to take a long time, and that we could minister for many, many years in this community by doing that, as opposed to just distributing food and water and so forth. And then one thing led to another, and Dan and I continued talking, and we decided this is it. So we started working together, and Dan and the guys came out. It's been great, and so it's been a huge blessing to our church. It's been a blessing to the community, and it will continue to go. And I encourage all of you who have not come to enjoy it. You get an opportunity to do short-term missions once a month, even if you only have an hour to do it. But it's a great experience. Now, to close the service, I want to introduce you to Dr. Larry Shelton and his wife, Faith. I'd love you guys to come on up. And I just have a few questions for them. Most of you know Larry and Faith. Larry was a senior pastor of the CMA Church for how many years, Larry?
We were in our 18th year.
18th year. And retired a little bit before the fire, a year before? Yeah, somewhere in there. Yes. And so, Larry, how have you guys been occupying yourselves since then?
I'm kind of reacting to the retire thing because we don't really believe in retirement. We're repurposed. So we're retreaded, however you want to look at that. And we had started, we really have a heart for ministers and missionaries because we've been in ministry for, I guess, about 40 years now. And we know what it's like to be a minister, missionary, and it's hard. And most people don't have a clue how hard it is. So just up the road over here, we bought a house on the canyon. That's a whole nother story. And we're remodeling it with a hotel suite for beat-up ministers and missionaries That's not the name of our ministry, but gives you an idea what it's about. And HVAC was to be done on the 9th, and it all went up in flames on the 8th. And so we lost everything in that fire and really wondered, what in the world was this about? And then fast forward, an organization called Standing Stone Ministry got in touch with us, and they reached nationally and internationally to ministers and missionaries. So they recruited us. So we now minister to ministers and missionaries, and we minister to the ministers that minister to the ministers. We're cohort leaders of missionaries and ministers in Standing Stone Ministry. That's one hat we wear. And so doing that, and it's a big hat, and we both fit there. We just celebrated 579 months of marriage. You do the math. We tell people once a year is not enough to celebrate, so we celebrate every month. Thanks for getting choked up. Happens to me too. Somebody tell a joke so I can move on, okay? Anyway, so okay, but I'll keep going, okay? So tell it to me afterwards. So, and the other hat we wear is ministry to teams and marriages. And so in the meantime, I've written a book, written a participant guide, established a whole nother facet of a assessment and training that's been used for teams, community groups, missionary teams, leadership staff. We've trained crisis pregnancy centers, counseling centers, church staffs, missionaries, foster adopt agencies from Cambodia to Michigan, and the response has been off the chart, but it's always been for teams of people. And I was training with a guy who founded this aspect of the ministry in Ohio, about 35, 40 pastors. And afterwards I said to Bruce, we'll call him Bruce because that's his name, and I said, do you realize the marriage and family application of this? And he goes, yeah, but we don't have anybody with training or education to do that. Do you have it? And I told him what I had, and he goes, you're it. So that's how Soulmates for Life was founded, and I think we've had there it goes again.
Should I sit down?
I like your guitar playing, by the way. We ought to play together sometime. Okay, that's good. And so we've probably gone through that with, I don't know, about 1,000 people so far. And God just keeps expanding that and expanding that. And it's getting translated into Spanish, getting into Ecuador and other South American countries. So that's pretty cool.
Larry is a world-class fisherman, and you landed in Montana, which is prime fishing country. What prompted you to leave Montana and come back to Turner?
Insanity. Actually, or God, yeah, we did not want to move back here. Not a chance. We have friends in Montana, though I was talking with him Friday, and he wanted to know if we could come over, play some games Friday afternoon. They were kind of bored. It was minus 20 with wind chill factor in Kalispell. That's cold. But anyway, in a nutshell, God, bring us back to paradise, relationships, people that we've known for over 20 years. We moved here in 99. And if you move someplace else, this is our rationale, we're all different. It would take me 20 years to get back to where I'm already here. So, do the math. 20 years, I'm going to be 55. I have this problem with lying. And so it's like, that doesn't make sense. My kids live here. My grandkids live here. It's like, so when we would come back, my granddaughter would lay her head on my chest and say, I love you, Papa. I'm moving to Montana. Not. So, all those factors mixed in, but, with losing everything, the fire, we have a budget to rebuild, and costs were just like, doesn't work. And then we talked with a guy who could make it work, and so just about a mile that way, we're rebuilding. So all those pieces came together, and here we are.
Our benediction today is Ephesians 3:20. Now unto him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly beyond all that we ask or think, according to the power that works within us. To him be the glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen. Have a great week.